We'll do that. With that bodhicitta in mind, we'll do the verse, refuge in bodhicitta. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, to the merits of giving and the other perfections. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, to the merits of giving and the other perfections. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, to the merits of giving and the other perfections. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Well, and then I'll turn to the Heart Sutra itself. And so last two classes we covered the paragraph, with the eight points. And now we come to a long paragraph, right? And I'll read the paragraph. So it's a paragraph that says, Shariputra, therefore in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, no phenomena. There is no I element and so on, up to and including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance and so on, up to and including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and path. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. And so that's another famous paragraph, right, with a lot of no's. No, right, sorry, no form, no feeling. I'll make a few points. One is, each time I've kind of been noting, right, so this paragraph is said, I was mentioning how different paragraphs correlate to the 5 paths, right, the sequential 5 paths that a bodhisattva goes through. And so I said last time that the one we covered last correlates to the path of seeing. And so this paragraph correlates to the path of meditation, right, the 4th of the 5 paths, which is a path of Arya Bodhisattvas who abide on the bhumis. So that's one point. But then I think for today, since we're doing this short class, I think what I want to emphasize is just one point really, and sort of contemplate it together, which is, so it's a very important point. It says here, Shariputra, right, he's addressing Shariputra's question, right? This is Avalokiteshvara speaking, right? He's addressing Shariputra's question. So he says, Shariputra, he says, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling. And I think I just want to emphasize this point, that that's a very important phrase, this in emptiness, right? Because one thing is, it's a very important point, otherwise people sometimes historically, people have misunderstood the Heart Sutra in general, and this paragraph in particular. And that point in emptiness, one point is, so it's not nihilism, right? He's not saying there's absolutely no such thing as form, right? That would be nihilistic. And so what he's getting at here, when he says in emptiness, is what that means actually, is that in the experience of an Arya, right, somebody who's seen emptiness directly, or is seeing emptiness directly, in the subjective experience of that person who's absorbed in emptiness, there's no appearance of form, of feeling, of discrimination, of sight, of sound, of all those different things. And so what they're getting at there is this, is that when one is absorbed in a meditation, I'll just say it this way too, like, so in one sense you have to understand whose perspective is being spoken from. Does that make sense? Like, so from the perspective of an ordinary person who, and sometimes we talk about conventional truth and ultimate truth, right? And they sometimes call conventional truth a truth that conceals, or truth for a concealer, right? So that's us. In other words, our minds perceive form, and that form conceals the ultimate nature of form, right? Which is emptiness. So perceive form as if it exists from its own side. We perceive form as if it exists intrinsically or inherently. And that conceals the actual nature of form. It appears to us in a way other than how it exists. And this paragraph is getting at the experience of somebody who's experiencing the ultimate truth. And the ultimate truth is a direct perception of emptiness, right? It's emptiness as perceived by a direct perceiver, by somebody who's directly perceiving it. And so what's being gotten at is that for that person in that state, there's no appearance of sight, of sound, of smell, of taste, of touch, of eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind, any of those things. Because to that person's mind, all that appears is emptiness. The ultimate truth, the ultimate nature of things. And there are a number of important points about that that are worth getting at. One is, they say only a Buddha can perceive the ultimate truth and conventional truths, dependent arisings at the same time. So anybody who sees emptiness directly but is not yet a Buddha, while in meditative equipoise, they perceive emptiness. And then there's a state called subsequent attainment. When they come out of that meditative equipoise, they perceive conventional objects, but they can't perceive them simultaneously. So again, for the person on the path of meditation, when they're absorbed in this meditative equipoise on emptiness, conventional objects are not appearing. So that's one point. Now, a couple other points are worth noting or important. I'm trying to think which order to say them in, but one point that's important is this, is that actually, I'll say it this way. This is an important point. Like, let's say it the right way though. They're not seeing form doesn't mean that form doesn't exist at all, does it? Does that make sense? In other words, like, and that's like, in other words, just like for anyone, there's a difference between like not seeing something at a given time and it not existing, right? And we all know that, right? Like, actually, like lately during coronavirus, like, you may not be seeing some of your friends. That doesn't mean those friends don't exist, right? It's just you don't see them now, and so one point is that, so when somebody's directly perceiving emptiness, they're not seeing the mere appearances of dependently arisen conventionalities. But that doesn't mean that those don't exist at all. It means they're not seen from the perspective of the person perceiving emptiness, because that person is focused on emptiness. That's one point. And then another point I wanted to get at, though, and this is maybe the most important for our own practice, is, so, we're not, and most of us are not, yes, that's right. That's correct. And so another point that's important is this, is that, we're, even if we're not Arya Bodhisattvas who can directly perceive emptiness, there's something for our practice here, which is this, is when we meditate on emptiness, and when, we went through this process, right? You recognize the object of negation, which is things appearing as if they exist inherently or from their own side. And then you engage, as the Dalai Lama often says, I just was watching him last night and he said it again, you engage in reasoning, right? Reasoning to refute inherent existence, right? So, and there are many different lines of reasoning, right? We've gone through some of them, right? Not one and not many, or not one with the aggregates and not other than the aggregates, or unarisen, right? That the cause, the reasoning of not of being unarisen, the reasoning of dependent arising, and so on, right? And so you engage in a process of reasoning that refutes the object of negation, which was inherent existence. And then you absorb your mind in that not finding. And there's a saying oftentimes used about that, which is it's from a sutra actually that says, "Not seeing is the best seeing." And that doesn't mean like this, right? It doesn't mean like close your eyes and not see, and it doesn't mean spacing out. What it means is when you identify the object of negation and you realize that that existence in that manner is impossible. So it's not, you don't see that anymore. You don't, or you see its emptiness. You see that it doesn't exist. That's the best scene. Does that make sense? And at that point, what's important for us, even if we're not in meditative equipoise and directly perceiving emptiness, what's important for us is that, and Gyurme Khenchen Rinpoche says this actually. He makes this point. He says, so at that time, you should not let your mind go to conventional appearances. In other words, so at that time, you just focus on emptiness, and you don't let your mind drift to even the appearance. In other words, if you think, oh, I'm seeing emptiness, and you're sort of seeing yourself as seeing emptiness, then you're not seeing emptiness. You're seeing a sense of self, right? And the same thing, if you're seeing form, you're not seeing emptiness. I remember once, I think I told you, sorry, one time I was with a geshe many years ago, and somebody said to the geshe, "Oh, I saw emptiness," and the geshe said, well, kind of looked at the guy, and the guy said, "Yeah, it was yellow." And the geshe said, "Lauren, what do you think about that?" And I was like, "Oh, he doesn't want to insult the guy, so he's putting me on the spot." Because if you're seeing yellow, you're not seeing emptiness, right? If you're seeing blue, you're not seeing emptiness. If you're seeing your friend, you're not seeing it, right? Those are truths for a concealer. It means they conceal emptiness, right? Because any form, any feeling, any discrimination, any sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, those are what we call conventional truths, but which are also called, I think it's an important point in this context, they're called truths that conceal, or truths for a concealer, right? For something that can, and it means they conceal the deepest nature, the ultimate nature of things. So if conventional objects are appearing to your awareness, then emptiness is not appearing to your awareness at that time. In this, and that's what this paragraph is getting at, is that, for the Arya Bodhisattva, only emptiness appears. And I've said this metaphor before. They say like water poured into water, right? Like it's like their mind is completely absorbed within a state, realizing emptiness. And then for us, when we meditate on emptiness, we need to approximate that, right? We need to sort of do our best to approximate that state. So, so at first you do give rise to an appearance, right? The appearance of true existence. But then and then you engage in one of the reasonings taught by Nagarjuna or Chandrakirti and so on, until you refute that appearance, right? So you're holding on, actually just think about it that way, right? You're holding on to this appearance of the object of negation, right? Which is, remember, the object of negation is a non-existent thing, right? It's something that appears to you, but doesn't actually exist, right? And when you realize its non-existence, you absorb your mind in that realization. And they call that like a non-affirming negation, right? It means like it's a negation of something that's not affirming some other thing. So you just absorb your mind in it's like, let's say, right, yeah. So it's like if you believed that you had this, intrinsic nature, which we do believe, this inherent existence, this inherent nature from its own side. And then you contemplate, right? Well, if that existed, it would have to exist as one with the aggregates, or different than the aggregates, and so on. Like that's one reasoning, right? And then you realize, well, it doesn't exist as one with the aggregates, and it doesn't exist as other than the aggregates. Then you realize, well, then it doesn't exist, right? And that phrase, then you realize it doesn't exist, right? That realization is what you absorb your mind in. And so at that time, again, you're not seeing form or feelings or discriminations and so on. Of course, for us, we're approximating that, right? It's not going to be perfect, of course, because we're not actually directly absorbed in that. But you get close. The idea is that if we're going to correctly meditate on emptiness, we approximate that more and more closely. And I want to make one other point, actually, we have time for this. So in reality, of course, this paragraph is referring to the experience of these great bodhisattvas, right, who are directly realizing emptiness. But actually, I want to say that for us, right, each time we do that kind of meditation, what we're actually doing in a positive sense, this is actually the process, is we're developing slowly, step by step, a more and more accurate understanding of emptiness. Right? Or you could say a more and more accurate, they call it sometimes a generic image of emptiness, or you know, a mental representation of emptiness. That's what you could say. And we're absorbing our mind within that, right? And that's actually our process. Does it make sense? Is the more times we meditate on emptiness, we're familiarizing ourselves with that. And if we apply different lines of reasoning and we sort of keep giving rise to the observation and keep absorbing our mind in the lack of that, we're not directly realizing emptiness yet, of course, but we're developing a more and more accurate picture of emptiness or image of emptiness, or yeah, like that. And that's the only way, for ordinary, this is what the teachings say actually, is that for ordinary persons, meaning non-Aryas, that is the only way to proceed actually, is that you develop a more and more accurate picture or mental image or understanding, I'll call it, of emptiness. And by doing that, you eventually realize emptiness conceptually. And conceptually means it's still a mental image, right? It means it's conceptual. And then you meditate on that more and more and more. And eventually you directly realize emptiness. And so anyway, in order to do that though, first of all, we have to meditate in this way. But I think this paragraph, again, like from one perspective, it's describing the experience of an Arya Bodhisattva and meditative equipoise on the path of meditation, from whom these things don't actually appear, right? Only, they're completely absorbed within emptiness. But I also want to emphasize that for us, right, this paragraph also has relevance. So it's a guideline, right? In other words, and it's a guideline in a very specific way, though, which means it's not that you just space out, right? It's not that you just ignore form, feeling, perception, and sort of meditate on nothingness. That's not it, right? It's that you have to specifically give rise to that object of negation, negate it, and then absorb your mind within that non-affirming negation, they call it, right? The negation of the object of negation, which is true existence or inherent existence or existence from its own side, right? And by absorbing your mind within that, that's a correct process. That's the correct practice for us. And so this paragraph, again, it's describing this experience of these exalted bodhisattvas, but it's also teaching us how to proceed in our own meditation on emptiness. And let's see. Okay, actually, so maybe I'll just say this, and I think one or two other people joined in, so I'll say again what I said at the beginning. So this morning we got this information that Gyume Khyentse Rinpoche was leading a long life puja for the Dalai Lama and all the lamas. So the request was to stop class early today because I think about half the people here want to go to that. So I said, okay, that was fine. We could do that. So we'll stop class at 11 in a few minutes so that half the people can log on to this other event, and anybody's welcome to it. It's on DNKL's website, and it's on also DNDL's website. But it's another Zoom call, so if people want to go on that, you're welcome to. But I guess what I want to say, I just wanted, before we stop, so the main point for today was that, though, is that this paragraph is about absorption in emptiness. We have class next week, so what I'm going to do next week is what I was thinking to spend the rest of the time on today, which is, I said I would do this, is we covered the 5 aggregates, but then there's these other teaching, or these other points, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, and so on, right? And what those are referring to, actually, are the 12 sources, or sometimes they call bases, the ayatanas in Sanskrit. And then the 18 constituents or elements, the dhatus, they call them in Sanskrit. And then the 12 links of dependent arising. Right. Actually, what goes on in this paragraph is that the Buddha, right, Avalokiteshvara, goes through lists. He's negating. So he first negates the 5 aggregates. Now I'm not going to go through those again because we already went through those. But then he lists the 12, I'm going to call them bases or sources, then the 18 constituents or elements, the dhatus, then the 12 links of dependent arising, then the Four Noble Truths, and then the resultant state. And so what I was thinking is, I was actually really thinking about this, and I think it's worth doing, because what I was realizing is like, those are almost never covered, are they? I mean, they're covered by the monks in the monastery, but actually, like, most people never really look carefully at what are the 12 constituents and the, you know, or rather the 12 bases or sources and the 18 constituents. Those aren't usually covered in much detail, and usually when you teach the Heart Sutra, you just say they're all empty, you know, so they don't appear. But what was occurring to me, and I said this once before, is most people may not know what those are even, right, in detail, and why they're taught, and why does the Buddha teach those, you know, and then and I guess the question, just last thing I'll ask is, so we're definitely going to cover we won't cover again the 5 areas. We'll cover the 12 sources, the 18 constituents, and would it be useful also go through the 12 links of dependent arising? Would that be useful to people? So I'll go through those as well. And what we'll do is we'll look at them in general, like what they are, and then we'll look at why, in what sense are they empty? Does that make sense? And why is meditating on their emptiness also important? And you'll see also how by thinking about them, they actually help you meditate on emptiness. They're actually, you know, quite useful ways of looking at reality in order to meditate on emptiness. So that's, I think, the plan is that we'll go through those, those lists of phenomena. And I guess we already covered the Four Noble Truths, but we'll go through that briefly, and then the resultant state. So, and then, so we'll do that. So next class, we'll at least cover the 12 sources and the 18 constituents. And then we'll maybe start on the 12 links. The 12 links, depending on origination, takes a little while. So, you know, we'll cover at least part of that next time. But I actually want to go slowly because I really think the 12 sources and the 18 constituents are something that it just struck me even for myself. Like, I mean, only a few times have I heard them taught, you know, like, because I don't know why, actually. I'm not really quite sure why that is, but they're taught, you know, they appear in all the Buddha, you know, many times in many different Buddhist sutras. So they're an important teaching, and yeah, they really come from from the sutras and also from the Abhidharma. They're taught in detail in the Abhidharma literature. But then, of course, in the Prajnaparamita literature, they're taught as empty. So but okay, well, I guess anyway, it's 11:01. So the agreement was to stop, and the request was to stop, or the majority, you know, majority of students wanted to stop. So we'll stop. So we'll stop now, but then we'll do full class next week, and we'll cover all those topics next week. But I guess the last thing I'll say is this: you know, each time I'm giving just like a suggestion of homework that you can do, or if you want to. And what I want to suggest is this: is in terms of this paragraph, it would be when meditate on emptiness, which we should do, you know, for studying the Heart Sutra, that's the main meditation, to try to notice this part, the absorption part, and to try to really connect to this idea that no conventionality should be appearing. Does that make sense? So that you're really focusing deeply on the negation. And that idea, not seeing is best seeing, right? So to focus on that aspect of the meditation on emptiness was absorption into a non-affirming negation, or a negation of the object of negation. You know, so this absorption in this state where, again, the not seeing doesn't mean like being blind. It means it is seeing, right? And not seeing is the best seeing, means you are seeing something. What are you seeing? Emptiness, right? And the seeing of emptiness means, though, that nothing else is appearing. So to practice that, and then maybe I'll even start next time with a question, just like what your experience is of that. I think that makes sense. So next week we'll start. I'll just ask people what your experience was. If you have any questions about that, and then we'll switch over and focus on the 12 and 18, and you know, all those topics. But okay, anyway, well, I guess we went over, so we should stop. But and the URL for the other. Let me see. Maybe I can share it here. I'm going to pull it up. Hold on one sec. Copy. I'm going to put in the chat a link to DNKL's website that has the link to the Zoom call. So if anybody's interested, you can click on that. I just put it up there. It's Dean Kale's website link. So if you want to join in the long life puja, if you click that now, it'll take you to Dean Kale's website, and there's the Zoom link on that website. And apparently Khensur Rinpoche will be there. It'll be nice. Actually, it's great because, you know, I think nobody's really seen Khensur Rinpoche since March. He's been in retreat. So this will be a chance for those of you who know Khensur Rinpoche to see him. But the link is there for their calendar, I guess. And it does, I saw it does have the Zoom call is on there and the password and everything. So, okay, I guess we should stop so that people can log on to the other one now. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Lauren. Bye.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, Lauren. Bye.
All right, bye-bye.